OPEC and its allies reportedly did not even discuss Venezuela during Sunday's meeting, which came as a surprise considering the attack on the OPEC member just a day before. Though in the past we've seen a tendency by OPEC to react slowly or not at all when geopolitical crises escalate, keeping a cool head. So it remains to be seen what will actually happen to OPEC member Venezuela. The country holds the world's largest oil reserves, though today it produces just a small fraction of the world's output. Still, the US trying to take control over these oil fields means OPEC could lose some influence. But it would take some time for the US to actually modernize and boost oil production in Venezuela. So on OPEC's part, right now, no apparent need to rush decisions. If the US goes through with its plan to seize control of Venezuela's oil industry, exports from the South American country could grow, with sanctions lifted and the return of foreign investment. What does this mean for OPEC? In the long term, increased production in Venezuela could further bring down global oil prices, which OPEC key member Saudi Arabia surely wants to avoid. So it is likely that OPEC will rather decrease than increase its oil output this year if Washington continues to intervene in Venezuela. We will know more in 4 weeks when OPEC Plus members are set to meet again. Johannes Blechberger, CGTN, Vienna.
All right, then let's bring in Professor Bonke Dumisa to explore the economic issues around Venezuela's oil industry. Professor Dumisa, thank you for your time this evening. So I want to start with the market reaction, because shares in some American oil firms, Chevron, ExxonMobil, they're 4% higher, 1.2% higher at 1550 GMT. But isn't the market being unjustifiably optimistic in this reaction?
I really don't think that the global oil markets and other economic indicators globally have really moved in any direction when it comes to what is happening in Venezuela. The companies that you are mentioning, which have gone up significantly with their shares, Exxon and Chevron, the main reason why they have gone up, it is because when President Donald Trump of the USA was trying to justify his invasion of Venezuela, he said that in Venezuela they nationalized the oil industry and many American companies lost out there. So by him invading that country and saying that they are going to rule it for the time being, then some of those companies will go back and they will recoup some of their losses. But that looks very far-fetched, mainly because when you look at the demand for international crude oil globally, it's not really rising. Instead, it is actually reducing. And that's why the prices of Brent crude oil prices have been reducing significantly in the past month. So companies who think they'll go back to Venezuela and put new investments and make more money, I think they're jumping the gun. They must actually watch what happens over the next few months.
Indeed.
So there's no reason to be real optimistic about the Venezuelan oil industry opening up to everyone. I mean, you've already mentioned yourself that the oil price started by decreasing in the morning and then it started increasing, but not worse than where it was last Friday. So this tells you then that what has happened there, whilst we have to condemn it in its strongest terms, when America is disrespecting international law, but the effects are not yet that negative. If ever they will be negative, and that's why the United Nations is urgently dealing with this matter as it is now.
And just for context for our viewers, where Venezuela's oil production is now, it's around 1 million barrels a day, slightly less, in fact, by some measures. That's less than what Angola, Libya and Nigeria put into the market in each of those specific countries. But just stepping back a bit and, assuming that for the sake of argument, as a hypothetical exercise, none of this political and military intervention has happened. Venezuela's oil industry has had a stunning fall from grace. They used to produce around 3 million barrels of oil a day. Output today is about a third of that. So what sort of investments in time, money, infrastructure would be needed to get Venezuela back to those production levels that we saw in the early 2000s?
They can easily get new investments for infrastructure, etc. But the problem is when the production, the outputs, the oil outputs in Venezuela went 2/3 down to where it is now because of the international oil demand. What will help those investments then, if ever, the international crude oil demand is still going to remain low, because there are no indications whatsoever that the reason why the demand for crude oil was because there was less supply. In fact, to the contrary, you've already said that Venezuela is a member of OPEC. OPEC is always going out of its way to restrict output production in the crude oil industry. So when people go and reinvest in Venezuela, thinking then that President Donald Trump was God sent to improve the demand for crude oil, they are mistaken. There is actually a move for many countries to reduce their crude oil supplies, because they say this is going to help the world in prolonging the existence of the supply of this crude oil. So if ever you go and say you want to increase it now, you are going against the tide. So I don't think, putting aside some of the issues about Maduro, I don't think the timing for this could have been worse, if ever you really look at the big picture.
Right.
But we need to condemn that invasion of Venezuela.